Some of you guys have been here last time, but I'm going to repeat myself a little bit. The section that we're working on right now is interaction design, and I'm Kim Lennox. I'm a senior interaction designer at Adaptive Path, and this is my colleague Dan Harrelson. He's a senior technologist. And for those of you that don't know, Adaptive Path is a design consulting firm in San Francisco, and we focus on designing experiences. So it can be mobile, it can be web, it can be cross-channel, just about anything. And we've got a variety of different types of clients that we work with. And usually we're brought in for the gnarly problems, the problems that the internal teams can't quite fix and can't quite solve on their own. And for some reason, bringing in a consulting firm and helping us, we push all the doors open. We really do the challenging things that internal teams can't often accomplish on their own. So it feels really good to be helping people design better experiences together. So what we're going to talk about in this hour and 15 minutes is interaction design. And so this is part of a 4-day workshop, 4 full days. And we're just taking a little snippet of, so we're doing 4 sessions today, but they're just a little snippet of each section. So right now we're going to be in the make and the real world. So you guys are going to be coming up with concepts for a kiosk, for a registration system. So it's a little bit about the day as far as the 4 days. The next one is, I think, in Minneapolis in June. So and there's some flyers around, and it's actually really it's intensive. People love it, and it's intensive. So for those of you that have been here before, this is our kind of our flow, our workflow that we go through. And we pick and choose what we're going to do. Sometimes we don't need to do research because the research has been done. But this is the general flow. We start with our research plan and our strategy, and we move on into research, and we go really broad. We get lots and lots of ideas, and we do lots of observations. And then we distill it down and come up with some findings of what we saw, what we heard, and the behaviors that we observed. And then we go broad again. And so that's where we're going to be right now, is in ideation. And once we do the ideation, then we have to distill it down and come up with concepts that can actually ship, right? So if you notice, the constraints, they come later. So right now, we're going to be really focusing on big ideas, crazy ideas. And this is an example I want to use as a case study throughout the talk so that you guys can understand how we applied these principles and design solutions with a particular product. This is called the Charmer. And it is a kind of an advanced concept. It's several years out from being produced. And honestly, we didn't have a buyer or anybody in particular. This was, Adaptive Path does R&D projects where we don't have a client involved. And this was specifically for a diabetic insulin pump. So this is the interface of how the people would navigate and give themselves dosing and things like that. And I'll show you more throughout the next session. So ideation sessions, this is what we're talking about now. How do you do it? You guys call it brainstorming, right? And what do you guys do? You get in a room, and there's, everybody throws in constraint after constraint after, well, we can't do that, and we can't. Set aside the constraints. Do what Alan Cooper says. If it was magic, how would it work? Completely set aside everything. If it was magic, just take that afternoon and set aside all your constraints and really focus on, if it was magic, what would it look like? It's amazing how you can actually come up with some really cool ideas that you'll be implementing if you just allow yourselves that freedom of not worrying about constraints right now. And so what we do is we call them brainstorming sprints, and we set a specified time. Everybody gets in a room. We've got lots of half sheets of paper, and we start generating ideas. It's all about the quantity. It's really about the quantity. It's not about the quality. And there are some wacky ideas. It doesn't matter. And we usually have like a parking lot for the, some good ideas that might not be implemented. That's fine. We set those aside. And really, this is the chance to come up with the big ideas.
Yeah, so a theme that you're going to see throughout the day as well having a technologist and having somebody who is not in the design world up on stage is talking about having everybody in the room. This is an ideal place for that. When you're sitting there and coming up with the ideas for what your product is going to be, where it's going to go, bringing everybody in, bringing in your DBA, bringing in your engineers, bringing in your people from business. So often we see that there's the UX team who's over here, and they're the ones who are going through ideation sessions. They're the ones who are coming up with all of the crazy ideas. Well, there's just as much value in bringing in, the outlook of an engineer, of somebody who is actually doing the work, who's doing the implementation work, who's actually building the app, and having them bring their unique perspective. I mean, they may see or think or know of some other crazy stuff that you wouldn't normally think of.
So from the designer's perspective, I encourage you to get your engineers involved in this type of thing. And from the engineering perspective, if your design team has asked you to participate, do it.
Yeah.
I know you've got code to do, I know you've got deadlines, but man, it is so fun to actually, it gets you excited about what you're building. And it builds that team rapport, and you have that shared knowledge so that later on in the process, when the designers have rolled off, it doesn't matter. You've had that shared experience. You know that some solution, some problem that you need to solve, you know that you've already tried that because you've gone through that ideation session together. We'll get into a little bit more about that later. So the other thing that you want to focus on is, when you're doing these ideation sessions, is the pain points and what are the opportunities. So we went out and talked, for Charmer, we went out and talked to diabetics. We talked to them at lunchtime because that's when they have to deal with their situation, because they've got to make sure that they've got the right amount of carbs, and they're doing all these counting, and it's a lot of work. Can I have that Coke right now? Probably not. I don't know. So we talked to them during lunch, and we came up with all these different behaviors and pain points that they were really concerned about, and from that we were able to generate the concepts.
Yeah, I mean, and when you're coming up with your focus, I mean, you have to have some focus. You have to put some constraints around your ideation, around your brainstorming. It's really easy to fall back onto your own internal organizational pieces for doing that focusing, for doing that organization. It's really easy to say, okay, we're going to do an ideation on how this can perform better inside of our system, or we're going to look at how this can. How we're going to look and brainstorm on ideas on how we can look at and increasing something in a given market segment. You need to break out of that and think about your users. Think about what is it that our users need, and ideate on that. Ideate on them. If they were sitting there and they were giving you crazy ideas, what would they say?
Right. And when you're doing this ideation, when you're coming up with this brainstorming, you need to have some sort of structure around it. So, having the pain points and the opportunities is a way for you to generate the ideas. So we'll have, maybe 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, you have to come up with 10 ideas. And of that particular topic, it's going to be around, the actual carrying of all the stuff that the diabetics have to carry. Right? So then we just generate ideas around that. And then further along, we will generate ideas based on another pain point or another opportunity. And so this is what ideation looks like. You're just up on the boards, you're writing stuff down, you're putting stuff up. It's visual. It's visual. It's not an FRD that's in an Excel spreadsheet. It's out on the walls. We see them, and we get to move them around, and we get to rank them, and they're part of us. It's a great way to, by having stuff on the walls, when people are walking by, they're more absorbed into what's happening. So get the stuff out of the Excel spreadsheets.
It's also scary to look at all the drawing that you see in those pictures and think about, well, I'm not an artist. I live in code, or I live in a different world than my UX team over here who is an artist, and they're drawing all the time. The reality is, they're kind of not. You know, these are people who primarily are trained in Photoshop and digital means for creating visuals and that sort of stuff. And the other reality is brainstorming doesn't support fine art. It supports boxes and arrows and stick figures. You know, it's really easy to get intimidated to sit there in the corner of an ideation session and say, I don't know how to draw, and you just kind of keep your ideas to yourself, you know, while other people are out there, you know, up on the wall with a marker and that sort of stuff. You have to break that habit and know that just drawing some sort of a screen or drawing a picture of a user walking up and grabbing, you know, a mobile device, whatever that's the kind of level that you want. That's what's expected. You know, dive into that and embrace that.
And you know, if you're generating one idea every minute for 10 minutes and you do that all day, we're not asking, it's not an award-winning piece of art. It's a stick figure. It's a stick figure with, you know, maybe the pump is up on your arm, maybe it's here, you know, where does it live? So you're generating ideas, and it can be simple stick figures. So as far as organizing it, as I mentioned, you want to cluster. What happens in the ideation session is that you'll come up with all these ideas. We had a session with some clients. I think there were about 10 clients and about 5 adaptive path designers and researchers. And we generated 360 concepts in one afternoon. Can you imagine? That's a lot. So how do you actually figure out what's important? You start to cluster it, and what you find is that there'll be these themes that emerge. And you'll see, oh, wow, we're actually really, the mobility thing is a big thing because, look, we generated 50 ideas around mobility. So we're going to focus on that. And so it helps you actually figure out what the business value is and helps you figure out what your priorities are as you're building. So clustering will be a natural part of the process. Generate the ideas first and then start organizing them. So here's a way of organizing some concepts in the physical form. So it's the Xbox 360, and it's plotted out on a wild to mild and on an organic to architectural.
Yeah, when the Xbox group came up with this way of looking at ranking and organizing all of their concepts for the physical device, they had to realize that this is living in someone's home. It's in their living room. It's next to the rest of the things that are in their house. It may be 5 feet from a photo of the family. And how does that work? What is the feeling that they want to exude living in that world? You know, do they want it to be something more organic where it just kind of folds into the space? Can they afford to go really, really wild and crazy? Sure, the market may like that PR, you know, may like that. It may have a lot of buzz, but is that really going to fit into people's lives? So these two, this organization here still kind of goes back into the research that the Microsoft group did when they were talking to users and understanding, you know, what is the world that this box is going to live in.
Mm-hmm. And here's another example where it's a laptop case. And so this particular, you know, a lot of different ideas, and then they were distilled into this model that helps you understand that you'll see that some of them are duplicates in the same one because the criteria is that, you know, there's a protected, modifiable, secure, versatile, and adaptable. So as you're moving forward in the process, if adaptable is what your users need, then you're going to be looking at the concepts that were generated in adaptability. If security is really important, then you're going to be focusing on those concepts. And so it helps you whittle down what you're actually going to be building later. And so here's some charmer concepts. So, you know, we had one section just on checking blood sugar. That was something that, you know, was immediate. People obviously are checking blood sugar. They hate to prick their finger. So how can we make that a better experience? And then we've also carrying equipment, as I mentioned earlier. Carrying equipment, there's a lot of stuff. So there were a lot of ideas around that as well. And so from the ideation session, we formulated design principles. And I have to say that they don't have to be one or the other. You can actually do, you know, design principles first. They'll come out of your research, and then you can ideate, or you can go back and you can work on your design principles. The key with the design principles is that you have this knowledge that everyone has shared. We know once the design team is gone that I know what to be designing for. There's the Palm Pilot, the original Palm Pilot. They had 3 design principles. Had to fit in a shirt pocket, had to cost $300, and it had to be easy to use. So That was their tenet. That is what they stuck with every single time. So if the engineers came up and said, "Oh, I got to add this other piece of hardware and it's not going to be too big," nope, go back to the drawing board. Keep working on it. If it's not going to be $300, we don't care. We want it to be $300. It has to be that. And so all of it created this constraint. The design principles created this constraint, and the original Palm Pilot was pretty friggin' cool. I mean, it was innovative at its time. One of the things I have to say about design principles, where we are now in 2008, easy to use, intuitive, never go on there. Those are understood. And the other thing that's important is when you're creating your design principles, if you can take your competitor's product and map it to those design principles, you got to go back to the drawing board. Because you haven't differentiated yourself in the marketplace. If your competitors follow all of those design principles, so what? Go get another job. I mean, there's no reason to actually be building the thing because your competitors have the same thing. So you have to really work on refining what those design principles are.
Yeah, I mean, and if everyone is involved, if you have everyone working on the upfront work that comes into building the design principles, they have ownership. They were part of the people who decided, you know what, you need to be able to wear this diabetic pump during sex. That may sound funny, but I mean, it's a reality. This is something that is part of a user's life. And so when you're an industrial designer, or when you're a plastics engineer, and you're sitting there and you're trying to determine how am I going to build this, you can think, well, when I'm done with this, if I can't wear it during sex, I failed. I've not met up to my design principles. It's really, if you think about you're sitting there and you're coding and it's 3 a.m. and you don't have your interaction designer to call on when you have to make a decision about how some UI element works. If you have these ingrained, or if you have these on a piece of paper, you can gut check, is what I'm doing in alignment with what the overall product is supposed to be?
So the final solution for the charmer was this soft pouch that contained insulin that would attach to the body, rather than a big hard contraption that had to have inserted cartridges. And then it has a wireless compatibility with the actual, what we're calling the charmer, that you can wear it on your neck, you can have it attached to your keychain, it's got USB so you can connect it to your laptop and monitor all of your stats as you go. And the thing that was great about this is that soft pouch is a prototype. That soft pouch is actually a breast insert, to make boobs bigger. And that came from research. The research showed us that women actually wear their insulin pump right here between their breasts. They don't carry it like I'm carrying this. This, ruins your clothing if you've got this bulky thing showing, and it's showing that that you have this illness. And so a lot of women would wear it between their breasts, and they called it the third boob. They referred to their insulin pump as the third boob. And so in ideation, there was a lot of fun talking about, oh, how are we going to do the third boob, And what came from that was, well, let's make it soft. Let's make it comfortable. Let's be able to wear it during sex. And that's what we came up with. So we actually have the prototype is actually just a breast insert that's attached, because it's got a sticky side attached to the person's body. And now we're actually working with various medical device manufacturers to try to get this to market. This is a concept that's several years away from actually happening. But if you think about it, the user research informed the final design. The ideation sessions informed the final design. We would not have come up with this if we hadn't talked to the users and if we hadn't heard about the third boob. You cannot go onto any website and see anybody referencing this. You can't look at your competitors' products and figure out that this is something. This is something that's part of the user. And so it's really important to be talking to your user, because you find these things that are completely unknown to you. And so on that, we are going to move into the activity. Okay, everybody, if you can look to the front of the room here on the right, we'll have them start sharing out what they've come up with.
All right, so we have a total of 6, I'm sorry, what these are called, clusters. Mm-hmm. The first one is, why not have more than one kiosk? So, if part of the problem is people are waiting in the registration line to check in because it's backed up. Well, we don't just want one kiosk as well. So why not have kiosks in multiple locations, by the elevators, in rooms, outside people's doors, so they could just check in right outside their room, things like that. Different types of interaction and gestures that you could use. There could be menuing systems. It could be adaptable to different types of users. Have a large screen with lots of real estate and resolution. And let's see, touch point, obviously, that's the easiest thing to do right now. I'm trying to interpret my colleagues' drawings here. Next thing would be printouts. For one thing, so that you can get a sort of hard copy of any information that you're getting from the kiosk. When you check in, when you check out, you get a receipt. You can print out maps if you're creating a map. I'll get to that in a minute. And print out a map to your room, things like that. Speaking of mapping, so it might allow you to create saved maps or custom maps so that you can find local restaurants, shops, shows, whatnot. If you're a repeat guest, then you might save My Map so that you can save favorite locations, restaurants, spa services, whatnot, and local parks or whatever. Make comments for your return trips and whatnot. Form factor, if we have people with disabilities and wheelchairs or whatnot, we might want sort of a tree kiosk that has different displays at different levels. Even your young kids could check in for you, although you may not want them to do that. It may be on a kind of a excuse me, rotating thing, so that if there's multiple people, in the lobby there, they can kind of cluster around a table like this, for example. Personal service, it would remember, if you've been there before, it might, start out with a real simple, thank you for checking in, now may I help you, and offer suggestions and whatnot. It is a machine, it's a kiosk, but it's also got that human touch that the hotel chain is known for. We have certain maybe characters or avatars that might speak to you or address you in certain ways of speaking. You could email questions because, you're not there to talk to a person, you're at a kiosk, so you might email questions that you need answered, such as, do you have any recommendations for dinner? When I say email, you would just enter them at the kiosk and then say, please reply by my email or by my cell phone or to my room fax or whatnot. Back to printouts, you could have all this information sent to your in-room fax machine. And finally, context. So again, it would know if this is your first time at the hotel or if you're a repeat customer, so it's going to offer a different context of menu options. If you've been there before and it knows who you are, it's going to offer up some additional things.
So in looking at all of these different concepts, how do they relate to Douglas and Charlene? Did you guys meet Douglas and Charlene on the back?
I don't think we read that far.
How many of you guys found Douglas and Charlene? Okay, good. So of these concepts, which ones seem to be appropriate for Douglas and Charlene? Like the avatar kind of, I thought, I don't picture Douglas really wanting an avatar. What do you guys think? Show of hands, yay, nay to the avatar? Not for Douglas. Okay.
Clippy.
Okay, great. Good stuff. Thank you. All right, we have another group back here. Oh, we're going to do this group here. All right, great.
Oh, you're in last? Okay.
There you go.
Hi, everybody. Okay, our clusters, we had the kiosk, our information sharing, our technology, the ID card, because our room key card was going to do everything, was going to be amazing. And then the output, we have the printer that can print anything. It's a really amazing printer. So first on the kiosk, we have two different types of kiosks. We have the registration kiosk. The registration kiosk, you go in, you sit down, you pick the music you want to hear played, and you get the little massage while you're checking in. You can print out the luggage tags, you put those on your bag so you can just leave them in the lobby. You have a scanner in there, scans your ID, and it prints out or dispenses your key card, so then you're on your way. Then we have the other types of kiosk, which is where you can order additional services and whatnot. You can sign up for your spa treatments and your tennis events and things like that. Then we had, for technology, it would, of course, be multilingual. You'd be able to adjust the font size. You'd be able to, all the adaptive kinds of things. That's what we had under our technology section. And then also we had web access so that you could access the information in the kiosk from your laptop. So you wouldn't be able to obviously print or dispense a key from your laptop, but you would be able to access all the information about the spa treatments, your schedule. So if you've already scheduled something for 8, you could access that through your own laptop. And our magic ID card would be able to recall everything about you. And then finally, the printer. The printer would print, your room key. It would print the tags for the luggage. It would print tickets for the show. And then we thought, well, cool. Let's go ahead and expand this to the neighborhood. So we went ahead and expanded. And now you can actually use the ID card for like the guy who gives us carriage rides in the park. That'll be on your ID card. He pops it in. You've already taken care of it. So basically, our printer was getting so amazing that we decided to move some of that functionality back to our ID card. So that's how we kind of ended up. So that's our kiosk.
Great. So in thinking about the users, what do you think? The amazing key card, do you think that Douglas would like that? Yay or nay, show of hands. Yes, he'd like it. I think he'd like it. I don't know about doing the ride on the horse carriage thing, but he might be able to just have this one-stop thing.
Well, he could use it for a massage because he's a tired guy.
Right, right. All right, so shall we move on to another one? Any questions about this one? No? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I think the other guys are in the back here.
Okay. Can they come on up? Because we can't get the camera to point
Yeah. Actually, I'm sorry, you guys. Can you come up to the front because the camera is so close that we won't be able to shoot you?
Try to get you up on screen.
Or at least come, I guess, right in front. If you want to just come right here, even, the camera could. There you go.
Good.
You guys are going to be doing it too, right?
All right.
So,
Oh.
I can tell you about 75 clusters.
By the way, I was going to mention for stickies, for this type of activity, don't buy these. These are a nightmare because the sticky's on the wrong side sometimes. So you notice up in front, the sticky's on the bottom. So don't buy these next, when you do your ideation sessions.
you guys want to throw your
Make great poker cards, though.
Do you want to throw yours up?
Well, as you can all see, I guess, from up front there, we started off with basically starting down here in the corner. We have about 7 or 8 major clusters. We started off with kind of a traditional themed kiosk that had, in some cases, depending upon the theme of the hotel, like flowers or wine tasting type motifs around it.
Give me your hand.
And I guess you could probably get drunk while you're standing there. Then we moved up to the concept of decentralizing the kiosks so that in actuality these touch screens, which would allow someone such as Dave to modify their experience at any point in the hotel. So for example, like one of the earlier examples, on one of our drawings here we have a very, very large vertical screen, much like if anyone's been to the Salt Lake International Airport, these large flat screens where you can actually touch and go through and set up additional features. These are found in the hotel elevators, outside your rooms, in the hallways. And then we started talking about, well, if we wanted to do that, let's take it one step further. And we looked into the concept of a mobile device, and we had some of the similar types of ideas that other people had, where you've got the fob that you can carry around that has all your information on it. We had the intelligent smart card that would have your information on it. But then we had the notion of taking it one step further. When a person's here on vacation, except for our friend who likes to hold himself up in the room, we thought going out in the community would be a lot of fun, but we like to usually carry around a camera of some kind. So instead, we came up with the idea of having a mobile device that's either a device that's given to the person, like in the case of our other client who doesn't potentially carry a device of her own, or it's one that's given by the hotel that has a camera built into it, and it has these other features built in whereby, again, you can go to different shops and you can be told about different services they provide, as well as discounts that are available to individuals who are staying at the hotel. And then we had one guy who just totally went to town on the functions, and I could go through all these, but these were awesome. And we found ourselves moving away from the notion of a kiosk to this notion of
A standalone kiosk.
Yeah, we almost did away with it entirely. Then someone had to come over and bring us back to reality because we were going too magical. We had X-Files implants and some other cool features. We couldn't determine which part of the body was going to get the implant. So, but it was a lot of fun. Got a lot of neat ideas.
And so what was the final solution that you wanted to lean towards? Because I heard something about going mobility.
We did. And we leaned toward this one cluster here of a smart device, or better yet, a series of apps that are downloaded to anyone's mobile device that allow them to become a part of the community or to have access to all the functions of the hotel while they're there.
Great. Good stuff. Thank you. Any questions about this one?
Anybody got feedback on that?
Again, anything about, like, what do you guys think about Douglas? Do you think he'd like the mobility aspect of it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think so.
Because then he could do it maybe in the cab on the way from the airport, right? All right, great.
Cool. We got one more.
Can I just move this up?
But the camera can probably pan down.
Can I pick it up?
Let's see. Oops.
Not good.
There you go.
All right. So we start with the clustering like everyone else. Then we move it to sort of a workflow. But the clustering, the basic ideas were that we have 3 main ways to get started with the hotel experience. So if you're if you're a big mobile guy, if your phone's your life, and you can SMS to check in, you can check in at home and use your cell phone if it has RFID as a key card without even going to the lobby at all. You can check in on the web, obviously, and we have a bunch of kiosk concepts. If you go into the hotel and don't want to talk to anyone, you can just use a kiosk. So we sort of moved. We did the clustering, and then we thought about this workflow of checking in, using all sorts of ways, like the mobile phone, being there yourself, or doing it on the web. We thought about the touch interface that solves all these problems that people have with one not wanting to talk to people, to not having their glasses to read all sorts of papers and stuff. And we thought about moving that touch interface to the lobby, to your bedroom. You're not going to if we have an interface that is as simple as a 4-step process that goes along with time. So from check-in to check-out with indulging and reviewing your experience and your balance and all that. And if you can do it anywhere, it becomes a rich experience. You probably don't want to see your bill when you're when you're in bed, but when you check into your room, it's probably going to be good to know what you've already spent and all that. So we moved to this workflow, and I'm not going to take more of your time.
So they get bonus points because they created a model, which is actually the next step in the process as well, is to distill the ideas down into something that's tangible. Isn't this a lot easier for you guys to see when it's drawn out and it's, you get a quick snapshot? And it's nice because, you don't have to focus in on all the words, right, and read everything. So bonus points on the drawing.
Go in the back.
One of the other things we wanted to get away from is, why do we have hotel keys at all? Like, why isn't it, in this case, they're from Portugal, so their phones are much more rich than they are in the U.S., but like, why not just use your credit card as the hotel key? Like, what? I mean, it's already got the magnetic strip. It knows who you are. I mean, why get the key at all? So the check-in kiosk, then that's all you need is the screen, or you've already checked in once you get there. So you can actually check in on the web. It'll tell you what room it is. Then you just go to that hotel and go into your room, use your credit card to get in.
That sounds pretty cool. What's that?
What if you need 3 keys?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good little use case. Yeah, that's a problem. Hey,
You can
wait.
associate multiple credit cards with one account.
There you go. Problem solved.
Done.
All right. Thank
Good
you.
stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Let's put the slides back up.
All right, so what do you guys think of that activity? Was it kind of cool? Was it different? Who hasn't done an ideation session like that or a brainstorming? How did that feel for you guys? Yeah? Fun? Good? And so everybody else has done this before. You guys are old hats. What's different about what we taught you guys? Is it the clustering, or what's the approach that anybody want to share?
So the one thing I noticed is every time I've been in a company that did brainstorming, we always created the categories and kind of groups first, and then try to come up with ideas that fit into the categories. So the idea of coming out with the ideas first and then fitting them into categories, I think worked out a lot better, because even though half our group abandoned us, we came up with some ideas I don't think we would have if we came up with the clusters first or the groupings first. I think a lot of the things that we came up with would have just never happened.
That's a great point. So when you're doing your ideation, don't think about features and functionality. Don't think about the technology. Think about the magic. How would it work if it was magic? And think about the users. So it's not like how we're going to fulfill the FRD, right? It's about what's the experience about for the user. And some really cool ideas will generate from that.
So one of the things that I thought was most interesting was actually having, I mentioned this to Dan, but having printed personas. Mm-hmm. So we talk about, when we're doing these kind of brainstorming activities, we'll talk about who we think the archetype user is. But having made that decision separately and formalized it enough to where you could actually print it out on paper, mm-hmm. so that when you're brainstorming, you can kind of refer back to the persona and say, well, what would so-and-so say about that particular feature or idea?
Right.
And
right.
being able to refer back to it in that way.
Right.
So that's something I'm actually going to take away and go back and use immediately.
So you're going to start doing personas now and getting them out on paper. That's great. There's another question or comment here.
Yeah, it seems to me that if you're not careful, this would just be another way of repeating a lot of mistakes. What you seem to hear from a lot of places, or a lot of the groups, is that you started doing advanced features, downloadable applications. Somebody who can't figure out how to use a remote control is not going to be able to use a mobile device. It's just another way of representing the same stuff.
Right.
So how do you keep the user in mind through these? Because it's very easy to get carried away in these brainstorm sessions.
Right. Well, so what you do is you get the clusters together and you come up with what seems more plausible. So later on in the process, so we're really wide, right? We're in that double diamond. We're in the second diamond, and we're as broad as it gets. Constraints start coming in. Reality starts setting in, and we always go back to what would Douglas want, what would Charlene want, what are the things that are valuable for that particular user or that set of users that we're working with. And then stuff starts to fall off. And so you're not going to have the wacky ideas because it's not plausible or it's not appropriate for the user. But if you're doing it in such a way that it's user-focused instead of feature and functionality, I have this cool technology and I'm going to build something around it, reverse that. Think about, this is an unmet need in the marketplace. I'm going to build something that fulfills that need. And by taking that approach, you still end up with some cool stuff, but you're taking a different, you have a different filter from the user's perspective.
And I just got the high sign that we are out of time. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it.